hooked up with a communist nut.
Gives at least some protection to 30 millions of our citizens who will reap direct benefits through unemployment compensation, through old age pensions, and through increased services for the protection of children and the prevention of ill health.
That was kind of scary at first.
A new world order where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law.
I am today ordering a freeze on all prices and wages throughout the United States for a period of 90 days.
The college is an institution which stands in the place of the parent, implying restriction instead of freedom, tutorial rather than professorial teaching, and residence within college halls. But a university is a place for advanced and special instruction of youth who have been prepared for their freedom by the discipline of a lower school.
It reminds us once again that when our security is involved, we are not partisans of any kind. We are Americans.
But on December 15, 1952, the United States Supreme Court declared Oklahoma's special oath law for teachers to be unconstitutional. Schools in different places could be studied and compared, and their accomplishments rated.
There will be laid before the Congress proposed legislation to remove legal barriers to the exchange of appropriate technological information with friendly countries.
As I leave the presidency,
and for all the latest news and information about coronavirus.
Hello, hello, hello. How's everybody doing? My name is James, and this transmission just might end abruptly. There's some bad thunderstorms, And it looks like I missed my initial 4 p.m. broadcast. Sorry about that. Tonight, I want to show off some of the artwork for Series 2, which is awaiting printing as we speak. Some of you have signed up and have pre-ordered and have been very patient. And so we're going to go through some of the subjects briefly. There's about 99, so I want to get started. But before I do, I want to let everybody know that I have been doing a ton of conventions. I've been going to card conventions. I've been going to gun shows. I've been going to comic book conventions. And it's been an education, because when you're out there talking face-to-face with people, these are the kind of people that, need to know what this product's all about. The response has been, I'd say, 20-80. 20% of the people are really interested, and they're very nice, and they're really taken aback by somebody local that's actually, making something physical. And the feedback is generally like, well, let me start over. So children they're not that into it, but they do ask me some interesting questions. We're talking about kids that are into Pokemon. We're talking about kids that are into the latest athlete. And they always ask, are your cards worth anything? And that's a very interesting question. And I think that, when you try to sell something to people right out of the gate, you have to have these questions answered for them. So what I usually tell children is that my job is to make you collectible with some information that you can share and start conversations. The other thing is, I haven't been into sports cards in a long time. I'm aware of a lot of athletes, but let's be real. If Patrick Mahomes breaks his leg next year and doesn't play football again, nobody's going to care about his rookie card, okay? I'm not saying anything bad against, athletes, but the point is that I want to create people that are collectible, and it starts at an early age. So, a lot of the old timers that show up, like parents and grandparents that are with their kids on a Saturday or a Sunday, they really appreciate what's going on, and they'll get a couple packs or a box or two, and all of those proceeds are going to the print run for Series 2. So I'm not necessarily checking the chat because there's not a lot of people watching, and this is honestly just for anybody interested for a later date and they happen to stumble on this channel. I will answer any questions if you got any, and forgive my audio if it sounds like trash. That's something I'm still working on. But what we'll do is go over the cards. So right out of the gate, one of the first subjects is going to be the Panopticon, and anybody that's read about Jeremy Bentham and even Foucault's analysis later knows that we're kind of living in a digital Panopticon right now. I was really taken aback by, the lightning's really kicking in. Maybe you can hear it. So I do a lot of research, and I go to all kinds of places to get my material. And there's a art supply store that has a bin, just full of old slides. And I found this slide in a bin, and I don't know, that just resonated with me, and it related to the shape and the idea of the modern day Panopticon. So we'll go on from there. All right, La Problématique. My French is terrible, but this centers around the Club of Rome and their limits to growth. There were 2 books published talking about La Problématique and the solution. I'm not even going to pretend to pronounce that part. And, of course, it has to do with overpopulation and making mankind the enemy. We've got the Club of Rome and a coffee stain there. Again, these are photos that I make and I alter and edit. And I'm not a good talker, but I'm more of a shower. And I'm just going to blast through a lot of these. And then next up is the Sun Valley Conference, which is pretty much the modern day sort of, I wouldn't say Bohemian Grove, I wouldn't say Bilderberg, but it's definitely a technology conference that happens in Idaho. And all your favorites, from Peter Thiel to Elon Musk and big corporations like Disney and everything else, like to go there to make giant, huge mergers and acquisitions. And yeah, and that's my hand. Haha. Okay. And then this is actually pretty interesting. There is an actual company called Climate Central, and they make graphics and charts, and they even invent words like climate index. And they make these little programs that you might see on your local news, where there's a local interest story, and they tie it to something climate related. And the goal is to gain the trust of the viewer, because survey says that the majority of people love trusting their local news. And they infiltrate your local weatherman and give them all kinds of funny terms to use, so you'll swallow the climate narrative a little easier. Next, relating to climate. By the way, all the cards, these aren't necessarily in order, but they do kind of tell like a progressive story throughout the entire series. This is going to be the international. Let's see, what is that? It's the IPCC arm of the United Nations that does all of the testing and the analyzation of the climate. They're the ones that have been caught using the hockey stick trick. They manipulate data. They were the ones caught in the famous ClimateGate email scandal, where they were completely altering data to fit their narratives. Okay. Then we've got Sir Evelyn de Rothschild, and he's kind of a central figure when it comes to this shift in ESG through banking. And he and his cousin Guy de Rothschild partnered up to make the European Rothschild banks more climate friendly, ESG friendly, and even venture into larger holdings within China. And everybody remembers this famous photo, but I think you get the point. You know what I mean? Okay. So similar to, well, sticking with the UK theme, we're going to let children know all about Rhodes Scholars and Cecil Rhodes, however it's pronounced. But there's all kinds of interesting facts about the diary and his, or not diary, but his last will, his multiple wills. What I thought was interesting is reading through his wills is that every single version still had that central theme of an Anglo global order. Didn't matter whether it was his first or final will. This obviously led to the creation of Alfred Milner's kindergarten, where he pretty much changed he reorganized the idea of Britain's role as a colonizing country and brought in the phrase of the Commonwealth. It's just, good public relations. More other secret groups that aren't so secret. I mean, they're not that big of a deal now. I mean, I guess Skull and Bones was more of a thing during the Bush-Kerry presidency. I mean, I think the biggest publicity ever was when Tim Russert asked both presidential candidates about their involvement in it. And then they pretty much gave the same answer, laughed it off, and dismissed it. There is some information on the back of one of these cards that credits Anthony Sutton's online, his book that you can get online about Skull and Bones and how it was infiltrated. It's, if you ever find a piece of silverware that's marked 322, there's another label, then get it and send it to me. I'll definitely reward you. that apparently exists. Then there's August Belmont, who was a Rothschild agent in the North, functioning as a stock and a stockholder and bondsman, manipulating cotton. This ties to Series 1 card. This ties to the card in, man, if I can talk. Blech. This ties to the card in Series 1 about Solomon James de Rothschild, who was operating in the South near the port of New Orleans. Going back to climate, there is the 30 by 30 agenda, and I don't know how far along we are in that, but there was, under the Biden presidency, there was an initiative through the White House website about 30 miles in and 30 miles out of coastal waters are to be reserved for biodiversity, which means no development, nothing. And then we're going to talk about Max Warburg, who, there's going to be more Warburgs in other series, but Max is really, really interesting because he helped finance Japan's war against Russia. He, along with the Schiff family, pretty much created the Japanese Navy. And there's a Japanese concept called Zaibatsu. I think it's called Zaibatsu. And it's a corporate structure where you have different family members running different parts of a company. So, the patriarch is maybe producing furniture, and then the son is handling the finance, and then you've got a cousin maybe handling distribution. That concept is so you don't have a lot of infighting, deciding on which parts of the company need to be doing what. Zaibatsu. That idea came from Max Warburg. Boy, that doesn't look good. Let me fix that. This is the. Can I zoom out on that? Dadgum. That looks like trash. Well, shucks. Anyways, that one we're going to have to skip, but that's all about the First Name Club. That's the group of men that did their late night journey to Jekyll Island. And the I guess those horizontal cards aren't going to show up too well. Then children of all ages need to know about NAFTA and where do they get all their toys or clothing in this case. But the North American Free Trade Association is, we're still feeling ripples from that. I thought was interesting about this subject is that well into, I guess, Obama's presidency, there were a lot of restrictions placed on Mexican truck drivers. And it's for the same reasons today, where they have low safety standards, no insurance coverage, and they can't really read English when they're driving. And I can barely speak it. Sorry, I'm a little frazzled tonight because of all the power outages and problems. Okay, moving on to the Clintons. And the Clintons, they had quite a few scandals in office, and it usually related to all the technology that was in the hands of China. And we got some of their greatest hits on the back of our retro cassette tape. Got another horizontal card. Sorry, y'all. If I could somehow... Can I move this? No, I guess not. I'll tell you what. I'm just going to make a judgment call here. Hey, there we go. Okay, so I got to show this one off. I like my retro baseball cards. Related to NAFTA, we've got the North American Union, and that was sort of a test into maybe creating an Amero currency, and it was going to deepen NAFTA ties. And I remember in Austin, There were meetings with Rick Perry and Vicente Fox at the governor's mansion. And that was getting local news coverage, and a lot of people were bullhorning it. And sometimes if you go on YouTube, you can probably find moments where somebody outside is bullhorning their meeting live, and Fox is looking pretty upset, which I think is great. All right, let's move on. I got to zip through some of these because there's a lot of cards, and I don't want to spend too much on them. Okay, so this is our first guest creator submission. I'm really trying to grow this series into having other artists contribute. And so I'll throw topics out there, and any artist that's interested can submit something. And all I'm asking is just for your imagination to run wild. I'm gonna withhold judgment because I just want people to contribute. But my point with assault weapons is that it's a left and right stranglehold. The left uses it as a means to raise funds. The right uses it as a means to raise funds. It's an example of how both parties are just shearing the American public. It's an absolute joke. Okay. Next, we've got a great composition that I made. I made all these labels talking about Operation Inherent Resolve. And it's literally a can of worms. It's pretty much the creation of ISIS, or at least the growing of it through when Assad was deposed in Syria. Yeah, those are not real worms. I don't harm animals when I take photos. They're kind of obvious too if you're a fisherman. All right, we have another guest creator submitting artwork for Killer Robots, and the theme ties heavily with drone strikes from Series 1. It's kind of scary, the idea of creating ethics chips or ethics programming for these devices, and it's not just in military gear. It's gonna ethics. Programming is going to be in your smartphones, your computers, everything. So moving on, we're going to address the 29 pages and the Saudi connection to the towers falling on September 11th. It's been addressed by others, but it's worth a read. It's not long, but I think the most glaring facts from this are the Phoenix cockpit invasion by two Saudis pretending to need to go to the bathroom. That one stands out. And the financing by Saudi royalty. It doesn't seem that complicated, but for some reason, I don't know why these particular pages were withheld unless we were trying to hide it from the victims' families. Feel free to add anything, y'all. Then prior to Operation Inherent Resolve, we got Operation Timber Sycamore, and that right there was just kind of setting things up for failure because we're training rebels to actually. Well, I don't know. It's so confusing that I have to go back and reread the back of my own card. But when we're training Al-Qaeda sympathizers and then letting them loose in friendly nations with all this military gear, oftentimes they're just changing sides and taking the gear with them and building up their own armies. It's a really stupid idea. And that's a real tree in my backyard. Okay. So then we're going to talk about the creation of the CIA, but you have to rewind time a little bit and go back to a man named Wild Bill Donovan and the OSS. And he wasn't really, he's known as Wild Bill, but in this particular case, we're going to call him Big Bill. And the reason is that he's got a compadre, and I think it's the next card. Yep, we got Little Bill. And Little Bill he's the man that was based on, or he was the man that Ian Fleming used to create 007, James Bond. And they pretty much recruited and ran a joint training program to bring American intelligence to life through the influence of MI6. And they established a training camp in Canada called Camp X. And there's more to that story in another card. Oh, I got another one of these dadgum horizontals. Let me see if I can fix that up for some folks. Dirt. There we go. And we didn't talk about the Lusitania. To me, that's more fascinating than the Titanic. This dude on the left, that's Colonel Edward Mendelhouse, and I have a special hatred for that man. He's buried here in Houston. I've been to his grave a couple times. But in his diaries, which are available on archive.org, you can find entries where he knew that the Lusitania was going to get sunk. And the British Navy at the time was being run by Winston Churchill, and he changed the rules of battle at sea. Oh, by the way, the other thing that's interesting about Colonel House's diaries is he talks about a trip he took on the Lusitania, and when they were approaching England, the captain raised the U.S. flag and was scared because of German U-boat activity. Now, that captain, turns out, just happened to get sick and not captain the ship on its final voyage. So I don't know what that means. I'm not suggesting he had prior knowledge, but it's quite a coincidence. All right, moving on here. Now, I spent there are many cards that I'm spending on the Propaganda Masonica Dewey system in Italy, also known as P2. The P2 Masonic Lodge had such an influence on Italian politics in the 70s and 80s. And there are several cards spent on this. It's a gigantic, huge story. And I think this is foundational information for younger readers, because people need to understand that there is influence throughout history when it comes to secret societies. I don't know about today. I think they kind of take more of a technological shape, but this is a very recent example of the involvement in political affairs of just one country. It's not just something from the days of yore. Affiliated with the P2 influence was this man, Michel Sindona. Any card that has that's been touched by P2 is going to be reflected in the artwork. It's in a coffee cup because supposedly he died from poisoning from a cup of coffee. And yeah, that's his face. Okay. Then along with it, we've got Roberto Calvi, who was hung from a bridge in England after he fled with a whole bunch of money. He ran the Banco Ambrosiano Bank that was facilitating a whole bunch of financial transactions through the Vatican, and he was spreading his wealth all over the world and creating pockets of he was funding all kinds of activity in South America. I keep getting distracted. My wiener dog looks like he needs to go to the bathroom, so I might just have to excuse myself for a minute. All right, there we go. Camp X. I'm trying to make this kind of like a James Bond poster, but the artwork goes where it needs to. And this has everything to do with the Canadian that we talked about earlier, Little Bill Stevenson, who helped train people like Ian Fleming, and I think what's his name, George White. I think he was the muscle that Sidney Gottlieb used for Operation Midnight Climax. I think he trained some folks there too. You talk about a crazy dude. He's definitely going to be featured in a future series. Going back to P2, there's P2 in the top left. We've got Paul Marcinkus, and he was the Vatican banker that had no banking experience. And after this scandal broke, he ended up having to go away for a while, like to Arizona for some reason. He which I think is a little ridiculous. I just might have to take a pause here and let my wiener dog do his little thing downstairs. So I don't think I have any commercials loaded up that I can run. But you know what, wiener dog, you can just wait. I got to do this. You had all this time, and now you're not. Now you're going to complain that you're upstairs. All right, so see if we can get through more of these. Camp X, who did that one, great. Okay, here's another member, Giulio Andreotti. He was a prime minister at the time of the Aldo Moro kidnapping, and he is, he was also a member of the Pezzenti Group, which was a high finance and international business corporation that also included David Rockefeller. That's actually mentioned in his autobiography. Well, I didn't put these in any order for the presentation, but then if anybody that has Series 1 might remember the 1033 program. Well, this is its lesser cousin, the 1122 program, where the 1033 program, police departments could get access to military gear. All they had to do is pay for the shipping. The 1122 program that includes the actual contractors and producers of military gear. They can directly sell to police and even fire departments. Going back to P2, we're going to talk about Aldo Moro, which is a very sad case where one of the former prime ministers of Italy was kidnapped and assassinated. And Andreotti was, he turned his back. He said he wouldn't negotiate with terrorists. There's some interesting, there's a whole bunch of stuff in Italian that you have to kind of translate because Andreotti does give some testimony of the existence of P2 and its influence on the Moro kidnapping. I wouldn't say the ringleader, but he was definitely the one that established or at least took over the P2 lodge in Italy, was Lucio Gelli. Licio Gelli. My Italian's terrible. Then this is one of the first cards I made for Series 2, but Cloward and Piven strategy. I think anybody that is aware of what's happening today can you pretty much know what Cloward and Piven's all about. That's actually also a prototype card I made for folks, so some of you might already have this version. Another Gelli. Then there's a short line of cards that are going to talk about how the Open Society has infiltrated nations and stirred up all kinds of astroturfing and prepaid protests over nothing. Here's another guest-created card where they're basically, I mean, here you go, BLM. What more can I say? Patrice Colors, Graft, the usual. Black Bloc. That's a tactic used during a lot of, quote, peaceful, unquote, gatherings where you have unidentified people wearing all black and attacking cops so they can join back into their group of other Black Bloc members. They're the ones that are responsible for breaking glass and destroying small businesses. They definitely taint the the otherwise, I guess, peaceful people that want to be there and share a message. Going back to P2 for a little bit, you've got, this is the Vatican Bank, and they were tied up with Banco Ambrosiano, and their involvement into Iran-Contra and the mafia, it's the Vatican Bank's really, really strange. I mean, they can almost do anything they want. Then a little later, there's a topic near and dear to my heart, which is education. Excuse me. So I want to give a little background before I go into this. All right, so one of the subjects that hit me hard was the influence of education. When I first read None Dare Call It Conspiracy by John Stormer, he mentions a man in there named George Counts. And I had no idea who that was. I knew John Dewey was, but I didn't know about Dewey's crew, which included George Counts and a man named Harold Rugg and another guy named Paul Hanna. And so George Counts is special because he created social studies. He merged geography, economics, and what else? I guess sociology. And this topic of social studies was designed to get rural children interested in global affairs, basically politicize them, because he felt that children that grew up in their own communities around churches and their own family, they weren't politically active enough. Really, he was also a onion-sucking socialist. His own writings talk about this need to form collectives and move people into the big cities. So I have many books by Paul Hanna, who was instrumental in making children's books as far back as the 1940s, advocating for a collective structure for taxation and civil services. I've shown that off before. I'll often take that book with me. It's called Someday Soon. And I take that with me to card shows because I want older parents to see that, look, see this? This was happening in schools as early as 1948, probably earlier. So central to that idea is humanism. And this subject details the Humanist Manifesto. And I think that's important because there are a lot of people who signed the Humanist Manifesto. And one of them is a future card here in Series 2 we'll get to. And the interesting thing about humanism is that it falls apart like every other social movement because it advocates the same thing. It advocates for a central structure to tell every other country how to behave and what to do and how to manage populations. And it's a running theme throughout all of these. And that leads us to John Dewey, the father of progressive education. Now, progressive education, the basic, the cursory kind of explanation is that the past is irrelevant, okay? All that stuff that has been set in stone or researched or established, that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the here and now, according to Dewey. And that, this is not a dead tactic. Every time somebody picks up their phone and goes through their social media timeline is living in a progressive form of education. It's whatever's current. And then the second they're done looking at it, they forget it. It's irrelevant. The only thing that matters is what's modern and new. That's progressive in education. And then we're going to talk about Harold Rugg. And Harold Rugg was also instrumental in the affairs of socializing children. And his name pops up heavily in the Reese Committee's investigation of tax-exempt foundations. I would highly recommend that you download that. That's available online. There are so many hot topics in the Reese Committee's investigation. And they have their own card. And this explains some of the witness testimony that was included in the report. There's several subjects that come from the Reese Committee. And yes, it's true. They, as far as I can tell, everything I read, yeah, they established quite reasonably, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that tax-exempt foundations are influencing children's education. At the time, though, their efforts were focused on the Carnegie and Rockefeller and Mellon corporations, and there's a list of about maybe 15 others included in the report. This son of a gun, Alfred Kinsey, a real sick guy, but what I don't think people realize is that even after his death, his institute was very, very pushy and active about securing all kinds of illicit material from the FBI. I forget her name. It's in my notes, but they went to court over getting access to all kinds of deviant evidence from, let's just say, abusers of the innocent, and they wanted it for their own research into human sexuality. Then part of, I thought this was really interesting. In around the bicentennial, there was the Declaration of Interdependence, and what's interesting is that it's tied to things like Schoolhouse Rocks. It's tied to the bicentennial, and anybody who was alive then, I don't know if you remember, but there was less of an effort to have it like pro-American, and it was more like a one world unity excuse. Great American melting pot. This idea of cultural exchange. It on its face it seemed pro-American, but there was a lot of internationalism included in it. A lot of United Nations garbage. Children need to know about astroturfing. When I say children, I mean pretty much anybody under 30. I don't know. I mean, I feel like, shoot, out of all the people I've been meeting lately at these card shows, I see some 60-year-old children. They're just, there's no saving them. But that's a different conversation. But getting people riled up over a cause that isn't very genuine, that's kind of astroturfing in a nutshell. Don't need to spend too much time on that. Wisconsin versus Yoder, one of my favorite Supreme Court cases. I've done a special show just on this. You can go back and hear the details. And what's even neater is you can actually hear the audio from the Supreme Court case online and hear the appellant bring up all sorts of what I think is reasonable, logical conclusions about what the Amish provide. This idea of the production of good as an actual measurable benefit. It makes more sense if you actually read the transcript. Okay, going back to the Open Society, we've got George Soros. And this, believe it or not, this topic actually, I don't know, I've been guests on some other streams, and this topic will come up. And this actually makes some people upset because, well, let's just face it. There are a lot of people that have a predetermined opinion about illicit substance legalization. And look, whatever you do, whatever you think is okay for your body, you're going to have to face the consequences. Okay, but let's not kid ourselves. I guarantee you the excuses you have or the reasons you have, okay, they come from George Soros. Okay, they come from his Open Society, and I'll tell you what, I don't have it in reach, but the book Dope Inc. Really goes after Soros and his legalization efforts. I think in England it was called decrimi, but what they would do is they would bring out these hard luck cases where they just, we can't find any treatment for our disease, and the only thing we could use is this plant, and you got to make it legal. Come on, don't you feel sorry for the poor cancer patients? Okay, yeah, we feel sorry for them here. Fine, we can legalize medical use. And then that starts the camel's nose in the tent effect, because then they're legalizing sterilized needles for intravenous drug users. Then we've got efforts like recently crack pipes through the mail, or glass pipes under the Biden presidency. It's this slippery slope phenomenon where we're going to get right up to the line of just full open legalization. But that comes from Soros. That does not come from the emperor wears no clothes. That doesn't come from your best buds at the head shop. Okay, so be honest with yourself. Going back to education, we're going to talk about Plunder v. Doe. And this, okay, there are some cards in here that are kind of hot. They're going to make some people mad, but I don't really care. This is one of those cards. This card is all about the reasons why the school system educates children of illegal aliens and how it happened. So if any of you have ever wondered, well, why do we send them to school? Well, this is why. Plunder v. Doe. Oh, I got another horizontal. Shucks. Let me see if I can fix that. There's my scroll along music. All right, there we go. So going back to education, or continuing on with education, is outcome-based education. And anybody that's read The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America by Charlotte Iserbyt knows about outcome-based education. And it's a synthesis of a, what do you call it? My mind went blank for a second. Operant conditioning, I think, where you're training children simply for a desired skill set that an industry is developing. That's why so many of us at an early age were exposed to click-based education in old Apple computers. All right, moving along. You know what? I might not even go with the slideshow. This might show up just fine. I think it will. Yeah, let's make it a little bigger. This is also along the same lines as George Soros and the Open Society, but the concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, that's a creature from the Open Society, and it's heavily influenced companies like BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard. It also ties back to Evelyn de Rothschild. Okay, we have another court case. It's Fields versus Palmdale School District. This is another one of those hot cards, because this is the California case that gives teachers the legal authority to teach any kind of filth they want in school. So if you've ever wondered why all kinds of disgusting books are found at children's libraries, this court case is how that happened. So check it out for yourself. The summary is scary enough. You don't really have to read that much to get the gist of it. But if you want to wait for the cards, that's what they're for. Okay, disarmament. So the Kennedy administration, this actually kind of began the path of Kennedy's eventual confrontation with Israel over their nuclear weapons program. And he gave a big speech before the United Nations about a cooperative effort to completely disarm the major military powers of the globe. It's funny, there's a couple of hunting and fishing magazines at the time that were scared that this also could affect your local Second Amendment rights, when it came to self-defense, hunting, and fishing. And I've been trying to track down some of those magazines, but I can't seem to find them anywhere. One day I'll have my hot little hands on one of those magazines. This is similar in, or at least around the same time period. So, Bureau of the Apocalypse. Did you know that some post offices, if they're in small towns, you might get lucky the next time you go inside of one. But if you request some old post office forms, like 909, and then there's also a reclassification card that will forward mail to high-level government officials that are hiding away in secret bunkers. I've got my hands on a couple of these. If you're lucky, you can find them at, like I said, old post offices, and I think they're pretty collectible. I didn't realize there's a ton of old post office forms about how the mail's going to run during the apocalypse. And going back to education, the National Education Association. I'm sorry, all you teachers out there that are members of this group, but they were founded as onion-sucking Soviets, and as far as I'm concerned, they've morphed into pretty much a worse version of progressives. And then this is skipping around a little bit, but the Phoenix program is pretty frightening. We basically trained Vietnamese soldiers how to use like extreme psychological and terrorist tactics in South Vietnam. It's a tactic that's familiar in other countries, but the Phoenix program was kind of exposed when the CIA was investigated. Okay, so this is a very, very scary but cool topic. The Norman Lear Center out of Los Angeles. Ooh, that's going to be a loud bolt of lightning. Ooh, okay. So, Norman Lear created basically the 70s sitcom where you've got the dummy that has to learn a valuable lesson at the end of every episode. I just want to spend a little bit of time on this and adjust a setting. There we go. Okay, so All in the Family, The Jeffersons, Sanford and Son, Maude, a whole bunch of other TV shows. So the Norman Lear Center publishes some documents that everybody should download because it's a manual on how to nudge the political beliefs of viewers, whether it's television, media, movies, and even internet videos. Wiener dog, you're going to have to wait. All right. And, yeah, that's still available online. The Norman Lear Center. Then there's a sequel card from Series 1 where there's even more information about weather modification. There was an actual branch of the, I think it was the Department of... I forget. It's on the back of the cards. But early on, there was a whole bunch of government funding into weather modification, and I don't really hear it talked about that much. People tend to just talk about what's his name, John Brennan, and his presentation before the was it the Trilateral? No, it was the CFR. He gave a presentation before the CFR talking about weather weapons. But there's been government offices. They've been dissolved, but there've been government offices going back to weather modification, since prior to Truman, I think. Planned obsolescence. I think a lot of you are aware of this. This starts with the famous story of the light bulb companies creating a standard for the light bulb lifespans. But it goes into other forms of technology and even clothing. You ever wondered why a lot of cheap clothing barely lasts 5 to 10 washes? Well, it's a part of planned obsolescence. Electronic voting machines. This takes me back. Maybe I'll reveal a little history here. So, many years ago, I partnered up with a local Austin branch of Vote Rescue, and it was with people like Vicky Clark or Vicky Karp, I'm sorry, and Bev Harris. Bev Harris's case is very interesting because she was able to prove that electronic voting machines at the time, you could go online and alter the data yourself. It was just as simple as changing a few numbers on an Excel spreadsheet. And I volunteered as a part of Vote Rescue in Austin to actually have paper ballot counting right next to precincts. And we got a decent turnout, but it's just, the people I was working with, I had a lot of good time with a lot of those people. I'm trying to remember everybody's name. It's been a while. But the voters, they gave us that look like, you're nuts, you're crazy. This is official. This is what's recognized. This is how we're supposed to do things now. Get with the program. And it was that superior, holier-than-thou attitude that we're all familiar encountering when we're having discussions with normies or just, a coworker or even an aunt or an uncle. But the history of voting machines, especially there's a couple of cases, I think, in Idaho. Not Idaho. I think it's Nebraska, where one of the CEOs of the top voting machine programs became an elected official through an electronic voting machine. So that seems a little coincidental. Okay, this is a tough topic because this is like when things really started to explode on me when I was making Series 2, because I never knew anything about the Middle East when I was younger. I mean, who does? And the best entry point for me was St. John Philby. If you just look into his life, it will open up all kinds of doors and answer a lot of questions about Saudi Arabia. British agent who was, he was always looking for money. There's some good biographies about him. If you're looking for something a little more salacious, there's a book by John Loftus called The Secret War Against the Jews, and he rips Philby apart. Okay, there's some lighter, I guess, more objective biographies about Philby, but he had a famous son who is another card, which is right here. Here we go, Kim, and Kim Philby was one of the famous Cambridge apostles. Well, he didn't go to Cambridge, but he was one of the Cambridge Five who basically sent a lot of secrets from MI6 and the CIA to his handlers in Soviet Russia. And he's connected to Victor Rothschild. Now, I've talked about this before, but I think it's worth mentioning. And dadgummit, I gotta find that book. Shoot, where is it? There is a little tidbit I found about Victor Rothschild, and I'm just going to step away for half a second, and it's right here on my bookshelf. I got to hold it up just a second. I haven't been showing that off at all, have I, the entire time? Okay, well, I'll have to go back and show you Kim and his dad. So hold on just a second. I got to get this book. Okay, all right. Here we go. Here's this book. So, one of my favorite bookstores, I saw this, and I go, hey, I know that name. Okay, Sir Robert Bruce Lockhart. And he was working closely with the British financing of the Bolshevik Revolution. Coincidentally enough, with Lord Alfred Milner, connected to Cecil Rhodes. Now, in this book, there is a brief diary entry about Victor Rothschild. Now, the reason I find that so important is this. I don't have my other camera up. But on page 216, he's talking about meeting Victor Rothschild at a train station. And he's bragging about his days at Cambridge and how he and his peers would drug the cocktails of young girls from London to make them pass out. And they're also hard on the athletes. Okay, so the reason I find that significant is that for years, Victor Rothschild would downplay the craziness at Cambridge. And here you have some eyewitness testimony contrary to the fact. Okay, so what I didn't do is, because I'm really terrible at this, I want to show off the artwork there. Okay, we did electronic voting machines. At least I think we did. Yeah. And then there's St. John Philby. Yeah. And then there's his son, Kim. And they're connected to Victor Rothschild. Hey, I think everybody's familiar with this subject, but a lot of younger people are not. So I've said this many times before, and I'll reinforce it again. I know that the majority of people that have got these cards, or at least Series 1, and they're pre-ordered Series 2, most of you are aware of all these subjects. You're going to open a pack, and you're going to go, yeah, I know about this. Yeah, I know about this. Yeah, I know about this. Okay, and that's fine. And there might be some more information on the back that gives you some more depth to it. But I want these cards to get in the hands of young folks. They need to know about all these subjects. This isn't a greatest hits for people like us that have been reading and listening for years. Okay? And the Liberty is emblematic of that. Here we go. Operation Big Rig. This is a wild case. Just check out Operation Big Rig, because it's corrupt real estate deals, it's politicians accepting graft, and then it gets into Orthodox Jewish organ harvesting. It's one of the most ridiculous stories I've come across in a very long time. And then there's a case where you've got genetic modification of seeds through Monsanto. I think a lot of us are aware of that. Seeds of Evil details just how gnarly intellectual property gets when it comes to farming. All right. And then there's going to be grass, which is generally recognized as safe. And these are ingredients that are used in everything from children's cereal to pasta to even makeup. And there really isn't a standard. So anybody can just use an ingredient, and if there hasn't been any side effects or hospitalizations or whatever, then they can say that they're generally recognized as safe. There's been lots of recalls too. There's a whole bunch of examples on the cards. There's a description about Craig Spence, who was leading late guided tours through the White House during Reagan's administration, and his death was very mysterious. I've been over this card before, but that's my hand on the left, and that's my hand on the right. I just like the way that looks. Study 329, that's an awful study about antidepressants in children and how it withdrawal symptoms and even complete cessation have side effects of suicide. And they knew it. They knew it through their own research. Okay. This is another one of those cards that's going to make a lot of people upset, but I don't care. But this details the actual military document that authorizes transgendered surgeries paid for by the taxpayer, and how it affects every member of the Department of Defense. Everything from the Army, Navy, ROTC, Reserve, you name it. It's comprehensive. I don't think that's going away. PCR testing. I think anybody that's been paying attention through the lockdowns is aware of Kerry Mullis and his unfortunate death prior to the lockdown. But everybody, I think, is aware of his of what his opinion is on using PCR testing as a form of diagnosis for any pathogen. Then there's Blackwater, and if you know Eric Prince and you know about Blackwater and some of the awful things they got caught doing during Hurricane Katrina and Iraq. I think we're almost done with this. Thanks for sticking with me through all this. Then we have P4P, which is a scheme to compensate clinics for when they get a high percentage of their patients vaccinated. They actually get paid. So if you ever had the high pressure sale or the high pressure doctor or nurse, saying, hey, you need to get this vaccine and this vaccine and this vaccine, and your children do too. And if you don't, it's going to be awful. Well, it's because they get paid for a higher percentage of patient compliance. Debanked. I fortunately have never had to experience this. I don't want to, but a lot of people who go through this end up getting debanked because of some vague, unknown reason. And it could be just something you said online, or it could be a purchase you made or a deposit you did through some industry that your bank doesn't agree with. And you're not allowed to know, but you're put on a list, and other banks are allowed to know. So you're in this phantom zone of, will they allow me or will they not allow me? And you're not allowed to know. Profits. I was inspired because I do a lot of photography around churches, and I'm very keen on, or I'm very aware of the what do you call it? The prosperity message that was popular during the Kenneth Copeland years. My grandparents were big on it. I know all of them. Jack Vanapee, Kenneth Copeland. Who's my favorite? Benny Hinn. But my favorite was Robert Tilton. That guy's a psycho. He's still active today. You can still see infomercials of his on late night TV. Smart dust technology. This stuff is terrifying, and I don't even know if it's inside of us. If you know anything about smart dust, then it's one of those things like blocking out the sun or releasing genetically modified mosquitoes. How are companies allowed to do that? If you or I did this or something similar, we just release some random thing out into the general public, we're going to prison for life. I don't know how they get away with doing this. Natural asset companies is a scheme that fortunately isn't on the horizon. It's been voted down by members of Congress, but there are companies that want to convert land into a type of investment. But there's more to the scheme than money, because it's a way to take land away from landowners through weird esoteric messaging like potential use or implied tourism. And you can't really chart it. You can't really identify on a graph what they're talking about, and that's exactly why it was abandoned. Oh, another horizontal. Dadgummit. All right, let's see if we can zoom out here a little bit. This is another artist submission. So it's not just me making everything. There we go. So this is a concept of the great game between the Russian Empire and the British Empire. And what's really neat about this subject is that it involves Freemasonry, and it's the practical application of Freemasonry. It's not just, a bunch of people wearing funny clothes and making funny hand signals. That's not what that's about. It's kind of a way to find refuge in foreign lands if you know the secret code language, and it's a good, for younger readers. It's a good introduction to the practical application of Freemasonry throughout history. All right, I think we're almost done. 26:59. This is pretty much just under 27 minutes. That's how much notice people had to get out of the King David Hotel. All right, and there's a couple of books. Oh gosh, where's the one I have on the Irgun? I don't have it in reach, but Israeli, or I guess I should say Zionist patriots, if you want to call them that. They use this excuse a lot when it comes to terrorism, whether it's against Gaza or whether it's against the British. But they'll say things like, "We gave them plenty of warning." Well, it's their fault because they didn't leave in time. We gave them enough warning, and if they died because they didn't listen to us, well, it's their fault. Well, they use the same excuse here during the King David bombing. And then we'll talk about Robert Maxwell, whose his ripples can be felt even today. I guess I don't have to go into too much detail about his connections to Mossad, but I guess the most notable part of his life has to do with when he died. He was buried with honors, and a lot of high-ranking Zionists attended his funeral. Okay, fortunately, I never had to go through this, but a lot of you probably had to sit through hours of Channel 1 at school. And the story behind Channel 1 is, it's not one of those, deep, conspiracy-laden rabbit holes. But it is very interesting because it does have some connection with Robert Maxwell, okay? At one point, Robert Maxwell was an owner of Channel 1, okay? I just found that very interesting. It's not the entire point of the cards for Channel 1, but it is a neat little factoid. Then this is another one of those cards that's going to make a lot of people mad, but I don't care. Jonathan Pollard is probably the most public, most infamous case of Israeli foreign intelligence spying and stealing classified secrets from the United States government. And even one of his co-conspirators, I forget which one, was pardoned by Donald Trump in his first term. But what made me so upset is that, there are photos of this where when Jonathan Pollard is, he ends up going back to Israel, and who's the first person to meet him on the tarmac but Netanyahu, to personally greet him, and he's considered a hero in Israel. Bastard. For thee, not me. This is all about the ban, divest, sanction, or boycott, divest, sanction movement, and just the awful things that it does to people that get in the crosshairs of it. I know locally here in Houston, after Hurricane Katrina, there were contracts issued to families that wanted to get their homes rebuilt, and there's a strange clause in there where they could, the contract would be null and void if they were involved in BDS. So I don't know what that has to do with getting your house built in Houston, but Greg Abbott, I can't stand the guy just because he's such a pro-Israel governor. Okay, HEK 239. Have you wondered why everybody raves about Coke Zero? Well, this is why. Coke Zero is produced through research on HEK 239, and this is a cluster of kidney cells that has been in use for decades, and every laboratory has it. It's not necessarily a bad thing on itself or on its own, but the research that has come from just this one protein has led to some pretty scary developments. So the way I understand it is that there are food products and drink products like Coke Zero, even soy sauce. I'm trying to think of the other ones that come to mind. I think some forms of sweetened yogurt. But what they do is they trick your mouth. And so they'll take a substance that isn't sweet, but there's a certain additive that is created through HEK 239 to make you think it tastes sweet. And so I know people that love Coke Zero, they think it's the closest thing there is to Coca-Cola. All right, this is a story for the younger generations that didn't know that we've already done, forced vaccinations or government rollouts of lockdown policies. And this happened in 1976 through the swine flu, which wasn't even real. I'm just going to speed through a lot of these because I need to wrap up. So I've never personally been to the National Academy of Sciences, and they have a building there that it looks like a religious institution. I mean, it looks like a Catholic church, and the verbiage and the way that science is addressed comes across as something you'd read in a religious manifesto. And I get that sensation when you see people like Neil deGrasse Tyson or some of these other celebrities in science. They do come across as prophets or evangelists for a religion. And I find it very hypocritical, and it bothers me deeply. And every single one of these are actual mosaics you'll see on the ceiling of the National Academy of Sciences. All right, another guest creator submitted this awesome. This is one of my favorite ones that got submitted. I think it's pretty cool. But the concept of state suicide. I know I don't like the concept, but I like the artwork. And it does go over the suicide pods. I'm sure if you have any recollection of the suicide pod, I guess that was a couple years ago, but it was an American woman, and there was an autopsy done, and it turns out she had what looked like strangulation marks on her neck. So I don't know if that means the suicide pod didn't work, or she was just strangled and it was made to look like the suicide pod. Then there's I thought the whole story of the exploding pagers, I thought that was ridiculous, especially that 60 Minutes piece where the guys have the disguised voices and they're wearing the black masks and this is what we did and we did it over a period of 10 years. A lot of that's BS. Okay, a lot of that is just for effect, but it's still a scary story nonetheless because Israel does it and that's just fine. Some other nation does it. Oh, and that's collateral damage. That's indiscriminate attacking of civilians, and children. But Israel does it, and it's fine. We're cool with it. Yep, that's fine. All right, CBP1. This is the app that illegal aliens use to get across the border. I don't think anything needs to be said about that, but I think the artwork is awesome. Okay, now we're getting in. Okay, we're in the home stretch, y'all. This is where we're getting into the ultra rare cards. Now, the ultra rare cards are going to center around one theme, and the theme is psychological research and experiments done on the American public or to influence the American public. And one of them has to do with bias pressure and the way that somebody's opinion of another's changes the way they treat them or evaluate what they have to say. Like if somebody, this happens all the time within your own family. If your cousin or whatever is getting married, and so somebody else is like, oh, okay, well, check it out. The guy that she's marrying, well, this is what he's kind of like. And so anytime he opens his mouth, you're running it through that filter in your mind, and it's gonna give you that bias. This talks about some actual experiments that confirm that, or at least imply that. Then we're going to talk, one of the cards is about the ash lines, where one subject is brought into a room, and everybody else there is in on the experiment, where they lie about the length of certain lines, and eventually a lot of people end up acquiescing and going along with the group. It's about conformity. Following orders. This is about the Milgram experiment. I just figured that it's a striking image to have a whole bunch of fingers all concentrated into one finger, ready to just electrocute that person because some scientist says I have to. I'm just following orders. Doesn't matter what it is. That's my excuse. I hate it when people do that. All right, then we're going to talk about the angry algo. This was the famous Facebook experiment where they altered people's Facebook timelines. And they were literally able to spread anger or general unrest almost at the push of a button. It's kind of scary. That's a long story. I don't really need to get into that right now. All right, learned helplessness. That's a pretty depressing subject. And I think we're just going to move along. Learned helplessness can you can kind of sense where that's going. The victim. Okay, the victim is the research experiment where they told a bunch of people that they had a condition. Either they had allergies, or they had epilepsy, or they had a scar on their face, and they were going to be interviewed for a job, and or not a job, but they're going to be interviewed by somebody in a position of power. And the gag is that the people doing the questioning were never told about their conditions. And then the people with the scar, they had their scars removed. People with epilepsy, there was no mention of that towards the interviewer. And so after this interview, the volunteers were asked to supply what they felt the interviewer's reaction was. And not surprisingly, the people that were given the condition of epilepsy and a facial scar, they felt like they were treated worse, or they were being judged harshly. But the interviewers were never told of their condition. And there are other variations of that experiment that I think are more interesting, but you have to get the card to find out. Or you can just read about it. John Joan. This is a depressing story about that poor set of Canadian twins, where one of them had to went through a surgical procedure, and the sick doctor, Dr. Money, that's his name, is his real name, Dr. Money, ended up butchering this kid, and he had to act out certain lifestyle choices. Well, they weren't choices for him, but he ended up committing suicide. This is near and dear to me because there's a photo that I took at a fair, and just altered it to make it look like children swinging through flames. That's just kind of, that to me right there is just kind of the metaphor I feel for children in the modern world. They're just swinging through flames. And then this is a sad one. It's about Harry Harlow's experimentation with macaque monkeys. This is actually very near and dear to my heart because my son and I both went over this material, and he was going through his old childcraft books, and he was flipping through one of them and came across a picture of Harry Harlow, and the caption was very deceitful. It said that, Dr. Harry Harlow is doing research on monkeys that might help us understand humanity and their, I get the psychology of people even better. And that right there made the connection for me, because the Childcraft book does not go into any detail as to just what a sick, drunk, depraved man Harry Harlow was. It's being presented as some rational form of psychological experimentation. That's how they sell it to children. My son pointed it out, and he found that, and he showed it to me. So it's proof that these cards and this research actually works. All right, we're almost done. I'm getting tired of talking here. We're going to talk about the Mouse Utopia in Series 2. This is another ultra rare card. There was also a Rat Utopia, but the Mouse one is more famous. I think, the idea of dorm living and starting life out in an apartment in a densely populated city gets people used to this kind of behavior. And then I think that's it. So I think we covered 99 subjects. I think we did. I'm not sure if we didn't. So I'm going to close that down. And I have to go get some dinner. And I'm going to... I don't know the next time I'm going to stream. I do this infrequently. Anybody in the future that's watching this, I really appreciate it. And I want to give a reminder to everyone that if you haven't already, it is very, very, very important that you pre-order a box or two of Series 2 at plunderworld.com. I am pouring my heart and guts into this. This is way better than Series 1. I have taken all the feedback I have from Series 1 and thrown it into Series 2. I'm already dipping my toe into Series 3, and I think I've made enough announcements already, because the grand reveal is that once I'm done with Series 3, Series 4 is going to be a special single subject, and it's only going to be focused on MK Ultra. But in order to get there, I have to get Series 2 printed. We're just, I'd say maybe 40 signups to go. And then we can get Series 2 printed. I do have some upcoming shows. I'm going to be at a very big card show this coming weekend, which is, I think, the 21st and 22nd of June. And it's near Lake Conroe, north of Houston, at the Margaritaville Resort. So here's what we're going to do. It would be awesome if anybody who saw this was able to go to the convention at the Margaritaville Resort, and you can actually get tickets for free online. If you go to the convention's website, you have to sign up, and you're given the opportunity to enter a code word. And if you use the code word Plunder, Plunder, you get free admission. All right? On me. And please stop by the table. Say hi. Talk to me. I love talking to people. I want to meet people. Okay? And I'll even do something special. So if you go through plunderworld.com and you pre-order Series 2, I believe it's through the I believe it's through the Apple, Google credit card, debit card link. There is a section for notes. If you enter PWS2, I will throw in 3 extra full packs when everything's printed and ready to ship. Okay? I need people to sign up. I want to get this done so I can move on to Series 3. And the box art is unbelievable. It looks so good. But that's all I have. And what I'm going to do is end this with my scary credits. And don't be afraid to send me a message on Instagram. Don't be afraid to reach out to me on X. I'm not a good talker, but I definitely respond, and I work my brains out making sure that this is the best thing I could do. So good night, everybody.